All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're getting into that conversation on death, inheritance, and the will. 22422 is the SMS line. Let us know your experience. You can talk to us about the succession battles that you've had in your family, as long as it's been settled already and it's not currently in court. We'd like to hear that as well. At Trevor Mbija, at Waiga Maura, the hashtag is Daybreak. Do you see the need of writing a will? We have it up there. Do you think it's important to write a will, and do you see the need of doing it? SMS 22422, hashtag is Daybreak. You can also call in, by the way, 0719777777 if you have any questions for our legal panelists around here, and we'd like to hear your story as well. Just use the hashtag Daybreak. I think that's exactly where we start from, and I'll start with John Ruby as a family lawyer. What do you need, at what point, and how do you write a will? Let's start from there. You first list all your assets, all your dependents. How does it work?
First things first, before you even get to the legal side, first you have to accept the fact that one day you'll go, and you make work easier for everybody who you love, you know, by writing this will. Now, when you write this will, there are a couple of things that the law requires you to have. First thing is capacity. You must have the ability to make a will. That means you have to be over 18. That means you have to be of sound mind. Another thing in terms of the wills, you have to have the intention to do it, clear intention. And now when it comes to writing the will, you have to execute it, and it has to be witnessed by 2 persons. And they all have to see you signing or signing the will. Now, there are 2 types of wills. There are oral wills and there are written wills. Now, the issue with oral wills is they have to be made within 3 months. The person has to die within 3 months of making the oral wills. You can make it orally, usually make it in contemplation of death. Somebody writes it down and you can present it in court. Now, the issue in most African settings is that we have a lot of oral wills. Just sits down with the family, tells them, this is how you dispose my property once I'm done. But what happens is the mzee dies 10 years later, you see? So that oral will does not apply in court. And the other one is the written will, and the formalities for both is there has to be executed, and 2 witnesses present at the time of execution. So those are the simple requirements of a will. But
we've had a lot of concerns of manipulation. You have a will, in as much as you have these 2 people there, there are always family members who claim this is not what they wanted. Is it a matter of denial, or is it there a possibility of manipulation as well? The 2 people can collude with the lawyer and just adjust a few things here and there.
You can always challenge a will. There are various grounds on which you can do it. Some are undue influence, others are fraud, like what you're saying, somebody manipulating, that could be a case of fraud. There are always various grounds on which families can challenge a will. A will isn't the final, the court will take it as the man's wishes or the woman's wishes, how the property should be disposed. However, the beneficiaries, should they feel like this infringes on them, they can challenge the will on some various grounds in court.
They can challenge the will on various grounds in court. Okay, Wanjeri, we know you as an activist, but before that you had quite a long career in matters insurance. And I want to take us back and hear from you in terms of the experiences you got when people would come to you, especially in matters life insurance, etc. How does one get over the stigma that preparing for death is not tempting death? What were your experiences when people would come to you, then you talk to them about life insurance, and they're like, so you mean pesa italipwa nikikufa? So, like, I'm considering that I will die. Yeah. What are some of the experiences you had? I can imagine, especially in the insurance sector.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a very small percentage of Kenyans who are under life cover. Even those who can afford don't take life cover. And majority of those who have this life cover are usually employees of companies where they have group cover as, covered as employees. But individuals, it takes, we would go and talk to clients, and it takes, some
How do you start that conversation that you need life insurance? Like, what are you telling me?
Right. Now, first, how do we get over the stigma? We tell you when you die, because you will die at some point, you need to prepare not just your family, but even protect them. It's a protection. You're protecting the people you're leaving behind. If you don't have this cover, the people you leave behind suffer. It's plain black and white. But what you find is, because of our idea of death and our lack of acceptance that one day we will die, we create this fear around the conversation of death. And we go through a lot of training when we are doing insurance. A lot of the agents, especially the professionals, not all are, but if you're a professional, we go through training on how to bring up these topics. We come to you and we ask you, this is who you are, these are your earnings, these are your expenses. What are you doing to cover yourself that in case anything happens to you today, that child you've left behind still continues to go to school? We don't think about those things when we are going through our everyday life. Not because we don't want to think about it, because we don't want to discuss death. Yeah. And interestingly, I have a family background where my dad would do these things where we call family parliament. And one of the things that he speaks about every time we have one of those family parliaments is, in case anything happens, this is what will happen. And he has his
so
will
he's declared this an oral will.
So it's an oral will all the time.
He already even has a written will.
Yeah.
So that put me as a person in a space where right now I have a will.
Okay.
So my children.
So one person here. I don't know about the rest.
We'll ask them if they have wills.
So if anything happens to me, I know what, and I also have life insurance cover because I'm not employed, but I have taken that step to take that cover to protect my family. It's about protection.
Yeah. And Steve, the issue here is family conflict. Sometimes that will itself is the source of conflict, because then our son comes and says, oh, so sasa mimi hukuniweka kwa will, you didn't see the need of putting me in a will. And then now you're torn in between keeping it a secret and having it implemented later on. Because if some of your family members don't know what's in the will, it means it can easily be manipulated. If they know what's in the will, it can still be a source of conflict. So how do you weigh that balance?
And how does Kenyan law help you? The law that we have right now.
Do you even have any legal redress?
It's almost oxymoronic to put conflict and the will together, because a will is supposed to introduce order.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get, and it's a part of a common sense conversation should have.
Yeah.
I always tell people that anybody who is breathing, it's always your turn to die. Every day there's a new day, it's always your turn to die.
Just say that again. Anyone who's breathing,
it's always your turn to die.
I mean, and it's always your turn to die, and common sense requires that you organize your affairs when there's still time. Part of that order, maybe just to input from what he said differently, when you're preparing a will, you're continuing with the management of your affairs as you've done them.
Yeah.
And your children, their capacities and their talents, how you favor them differently, and say this one goes, this one goes. Now, what people need to know, a will cannot be used to disinherit or exclude someone. And I think, as I say, that's going to be one of the grounds for challenging the validity of that will, because then every child, and not just every child, every person who is a dependent, someone who depends on you, someone who you maintain when you're alive, including those pangokandos, yes.
So what if I decide
including
not to
your grandmother? I think Kenyans need to know this. I think let me just restate so that for clarity.
Yeah.
Anybody who is your dependent,
declared dependent.
Anybody who is your dependent, potentially can inherit from you. So if you exclude them in a way, there has to be a rational justification why. If there is no rational justification why you've excluded them, then that will can be adjusted.
So then it means even the will is not the source of order, like you're saying.
Now,
because if I excluded someone and they want to come back in.
Just like all laws, Trevor, the law presupposes some level of decency.
Yeah.
And the law, when you talk about law, what comes to your mind is order.
Yeah.
Order presupposes some settled understanding of what is acceptable. It can't be, you can't prepare a will, for instance, to exclude a child that you have somewhere with a mpango wakando or whatever. Other than your children,
child is there.
Those ones have automatic right to inherit unless there's a good reason why you want to disinherit them. But what I see as what concerns most Kenyans, the daily issues that emerge, there are people in families with children outside families, and they don't want those children to come and inherit. That's an act in futility. It will never happen. They will always have to inherit because they are children. They carry your blood. There are people in the family whom have not been good, their parents, and they don't want them to inherit. Now there's a good reason why they may not inherit. Because, for instance, if you're always disrespectful and you're always causing stress, to your parent, your father, your mom, they may exclude you. If once a good reason can be shown why you've been given what you call a peppercorn inheritance. Just something small to show that, we just talk about it, but even a shilling, can be a peppercorn inheritance.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other people have gotten a larger share. Depends on how you relate and how you are supportive.
Okay.
But for Kenyans down there in the villages, You know, there's something called intermeddling with the estate of the deceased. This is something that we don't get right. We do it all the time. You know, I can give the example of the family of Kenyans. You know, the law says, as even assuming he didn't have a will, when someone has passed on, ideally the chief should visit that family in a perfect setting, just have a conversation with them and tell them, listen, once you're done with grieving, you can have a conversation among yourself if you're able to do it, or if you need my input, that's fine, on how, whether the deceased left a will or not. If he left a will, then it can be, whoever has it, you know, can bring it, and then it will be open and people will know what goes where. If he didn't have a will, then you take a detailed inventory of everything he had. This idea that people see, I see them also in my village, you know, someone has been buried, even as you plan the burial, there's someone already eyeing that piece of land. They're saying, maybe itachukua you. You get? That actually is not permitted in the law. Okay. And if you feel either your elder brother or your uncle has grabbed, because that's what it is, part of the property, you know, in advance, you know, then say, now maybe in church kwahi, this is what you can always report that to the chief. Okay. Or you can always seek legal assistance. What Kenyans need to know, there are, leave alone lawyers, we have organizations, many, including ICJ Kenya, FIDA, Legal Resources Foundation, that offer legal assistance, free legal advice, and paralegals that support family members who feel aggrieved. So there are options. You know, there are a lot of options that they can always explore.
I'll come back and carry on with you on that. Titus, we see a case now of wealthy individuals who are buried in a space of a week. They want no frills, no hype, maybe clear off some debts quickly. We've seen a case of that man, I think that was in Isiolo. He said, I don't want to burden you guys as well. But others are of the case that let death take care of itself. Should one prepare for death, and financially, how can one do that to ensure that you're not a burden to your family? Some are saying maybe it's cheaper to cremate. I don't know, what their thoughts are. What are your thoughts on this?
Financially, so with life insurance and with some of the pension schemes, what happens is there's a payout for funeral, the funeral expense payout. So what one can do is take such a policy so that in case of death, the payout covers the expense of the funeral. But for those guys who feel that it's cheaper to cremate, then let them go ahead. Instead of burdening the guys who are remaining with the funeral costs, then why not take the cheaper option?
Yeah. All right. And John, there's someone we spoke to earlier on here, and we were talking about the issue of joint accounts. And they said that if you and your spouse have a joint account and one of you dies, God forbid, it takes you so long to get that money, regardless of the fact that you have a death certificate, you have proof of marriage, you have proof of everything. As long as you are both signatories to that account, it takes you a very long time to access that money. So first, the basics first, and I know this is a very controversial question. Should you even have joint accounts to start from there? I know it depends on each and every couple, but is it advisable to do that as a preparation for your future and your death?
It depends with the couple, like you said. Some couples find it, they work very well together with joint accounts. My family, where I'm from, my parents do that, and they manage to work it out very well. And it depends on your dynamics. If you feel like it will not work out for you, it will not. But
what happens then after one of you passes on? Because then accessing that money becomes a problem. It depends now with the type of account that you have. If it's the type where anyone can withdraw at any time without the signature of both, then either can access the money through one person. So the easiest way is to have either or as a signatory. Either or. So that if you're going to have a joint, have complete trust. Now, the issue comes about where both of them have to sign. Now, in that one, the whole intestacy process has to be completed. They have to go all the way, the letters of administration if he does not have a will, or probate if he has a will. And you have to wait until the confirmation of grants, which takes about 6 months. And sometimes longer than that. Sometimes longer if there are challenges. And even after that is done, I should present it to the bank. They have to do their due diligence to confirm that indeed this is the right person, because they do not want to pass on the contents of the estate to somebody who's not the administrator. So what I'd advise people is, in terms of joint accounts, make sure that either of you can withdraw at any point in time. If it requires both signatures, then you'd have to go through the entire process. So then just have your separate accounts. I mean, there's no need. And that's actually another reason why people are advised to have wills, is because the nature of us as men, even women sometimes, you protect yourself even though you're in a union.
So you can get something and you hide it somewhere. You have some land you've hidden somewhere, some money you've hidden somewhere. So in the event of your death, these people are dividing your property, but they do not know of that shambas here, that money there. So that's why to have complete control over your assets, over sometimes even how you're going to pass on, you know, cremation, burial. No, there's another one people don't talk about where you can donate your body parts to science or to persons who need them. There are various ways, you know, like Wahena just told me just now, Michael Jackson's estate is still making money for his Twitter account. So there are various menus which you can control, and to just remove the burden from your family, I'd advise anyone, even if you just own an Infinix, just write a will.
Okay. So Wanjeri, essentially we're saying then that if you have to write this will, you have to be completely honest. Because then Steve is saying there are loopholes there. Even if I decide that one of my children are not very good to me, so I don't want to give them anything, they can still challenge my will. If I don't include some of them who I got out of wedlock, they can still also come back and challenge the will. Therefore, almost subverting my will, so to speak. But before that, we have a caller from Wajir.
Thomas from Wajir is on the line. Thomas, good morning. You have a question or comment?
Good morning to you.
Yes, Thomas. Go ahead with a question or comment.
I want to support that. Don't want to support the issue of writing a will.
Yes.
Because it is caused by parents. They don't want to talk about themselves, what they have, what they need to be done if they will not be there.
Okay.
If you can express your issues, what you have to your family, to your children, there will not be dispute when you die.
Okay. And you've seen that wills sort issues very. Have you seen personal examples sort of how wills have made life easier when a loved one passed on?
It is good to deal with these things when you are alive. Talk what you have, share what you have among who you intend to inherit when you are alive.
Okay.
Recently, last week niliona kwa media mtu akisema nataka huyo bibi akuje tumuone tujue kama ni bibi yake. Where was you? Where were you when this guy married? You never knew what he have with his wife. You never knew her. So let us tackle these things early.
Okay.
Talk things early. Okay.
So that viewers can settle this. You know, the conversation can be very broad.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
You know, talk about wills, talk about kids and the wives who are not there in the picture before. Here's the thing. Will or no will, if you have a child, that child has a right to inherit from you, whether it is in the will or not. I think if the
child is not in the will, the child has a right.
At least now, in terms of civic education, I think let the viewers learn that if a child there, within or outside wedlock, that child has a right to inherit. Now, if you have children in the family, of course they are also entitled to inherit, whether you have a will or not. You get. Now, if you have other dependents, like parents, as we do in an African, because of the African social structures, that you have a lot of dependents around you, you have supporting your brothers, paying your school fee and all that. Now, if you don't have a will, what would common sense require? Trevor, if you're paying fees for your younger brother, there's a presumption that had you been alive, you'd have continued paying fee. You know, let's not, I mean, conversation around wills is about conversation about common sense. You get. So that there's not going to be abrupt disruption in learning of a younger brother because you're no more. What is it, how much of what you've left behind can go to the younger brother, at least that can clear a semester or at least one academic year, right?
Okay.
As they plan.
The fees that was assumed that I would pay.
But if what is there can clear the entire college fees, fine.
Then it's fine.
So even the wife can't come and say, now that your brother is no more, I'm not going to pay your fee.
Okay.
So it's a common sense conversation around wills. Number two, if you have the capacity, if you have the opportunity to see a lawyer, I'll just see a lawyer because there's a lot of explanation that will happen in a lawyer's chambers than what we can do here on TV.
Okay.
Suffice to say, if you're going to see a lawyer to write a will, at least go with two people. As you said, who will witness that will? And then, of course, you itemize your property.
And then these two people will go back and tell your family you're giving what.
Then, of course, then you'll have an administrator. If you don't, what happens in the villages, I think, which is where most Kenyans fall.
Okay.
People have wills every day, just they don't know.
Okay.
And he put it so well. every day as you have a conversation with your children as a parent and saying that mimi nikienda hiyo shamba ya mfulani, this one goes there, that's a will, and you're saying in the presence of 2 witnesses, 2 or 3 people
So
who are saying that, you know, if it lapses after 3 months, then you have to restate that again.
Okay, we're due for a break, but when we come back, I'd like to know the difference between a will and the next of kin, because sometimes you have a bank account, you're asked who's the next of kin, you write it there. Sometimes you're buying something else, who's the next of kin, maybe that's now my mother, the other one is my wife. So can someone just come and claim that the will according to this account to the next of kin is myself, so that's mine, even though my will says this money goes to my mother? That conflict of next of kin and the will. But that after the break. 22422 is the SMS line at Trevor Mbija, at Waiga Moura, #daybreak. We'd like to know what you think on death, inheritance and the will, right?